Hi guys, and welcome to this episode of DIY Hair School. My name is Jillian. I'm a professional hairstylist, and I am here to teach you how to do your own hair at home. On today's video, we are going to be talking all about toning your own hair. The process of toning your hair can mean many different things in many different scenarios, but for the purposes of today's video, we are going to be specifically discussing toning blonde hair that has been lifted with bleach. So first, we're going to discuss why you want to tone your hair in the first place. When you bleach your hair, the bleach will lift out either the artificial pigment or the natural pigment that's in your hair. Once it has lifted out that pigment, it's going to leave behind an underlying pigment. It's going to expose those underlying tones. So the type of pigment, or color rather, of pigment, the color that remaining underlying pigment is going to depend on what level you have lifted your hair to. Once the hair has been lifted, your cuticle is now open and the hair strand is quite raw. Toner has two purposes. The first is to obviously tone out those unwanted underlying pigments that remain in your hair, and the second is to smooth down and seal that cuticle so your hair is shiny and healthy and doesn't turn yellow and doesn't feel brittle and hay-like after it's been bleached. Yes, conditioner will seal your cuticle, but it doesn't seal your cuticle as efficiently as toner will. So even if you love the shade that your hair has lifted to and the exposed underlying pigments are exactly the tone of blonde that you were going for, personally, I still use a clear demi-permanent as a toner to seal that cuticle and make that hair strand strong and shiny and healthy looking. Something I always like to tell my clients to help them understand the purpose of toner is that toning is a process. It's not a product. There are products that are marketed as toners, but there are several different products you can use to tone hair. You can use permanent colors, you can use demi-permanent colors, and sometimes people even use semi-permanent colors to tone hair. So remember, toning is a process. It is a process that completes the double process of lifting and toning your hair. It is not a product. For comparison, when you use a permanent hair dye, the permanent hair dye starts to oxidize, it lifts out that natural pigment, it deposits the new pigment, and it reseals your cuticle. Bleach only does half of that process. It just opens the cuticle and starts to lift out all that pigment that you don't want there anymore. But that's where it stops. You wash it off and that hair strand is left raw and opened, and that's why you fill it in and seal it up with that toner. So remember, toning is a process, not a product. So as I've said in my previous videos about bleaching your hair, before you even get started, figure out what level of blonde are you trying to achieve. Are you trying to be a level 10 blonde like me? Are you trying to be a level 9 blonde, a darker level 7 or 8 blonde? Figure that out first so that you have a clear path to which shade of color, of blonde color, that you want to be. The reason it's so important to know this is because this is how you're going to choose your toner. If you lift your hair to a level 9, you're going to need to use a level 9 toner or a toner that's darker than level 9. So you need to know that if you want to lift your hair, if you want to be a level 10 blonde, you need to lift out that pigment to a level 10 before you tone. Your toner is not going to make your hair lighter. So make sure you know where you want to go before you start. Once you have bleached your hair, rinsed it out, given it a good condition so that you can brush through it gently, you need to identify whatever underlying pigments are left in your hair that you want to tone out. I'll insert a little graphic here that shows, but you can see that if you have lifted to a level 7, you're going to have a yellow-orange underlying pigment exposed. If you've lifted to a level 8 blonde, you're going to have a darker yellow exposed. And if you've lifted to a level 9 or a 10 blonde, you're going to have a paler shade of yellow exposed. So knowing what that underlying pigment is that's left is going to help you pick the right shade of toner to get the shade of blonde that you want. You want to neutralize out that tone. If you want a more golden blonde, then you don't need to neutralize out as much of that orange and yellow. But if you want a really cool blonde, really white blonde, really ashy blonde, you're going to need to counteract those underlying pigments. You can't just pick any toner and expect it to work. You might get lucky, but you also might end up with a really strange or still very brassy color of hair if you have no idea what toner you picked or why you picked it. So once you have identified that underlying pigment, you're going to take a look at your color wheel. Find the color that you are trying to neutralize. So if you're trying to neutralize a pale yellow, find the light yellow on your color wheel and look directly across that color wheel at what other color is straight across from it. It's going to be a shade of violet. And so that means if you're trying to neutralize out yellow, you're going to want violet. So if you are trying to get a nice, cool, level 10 blonde and you've got this light, nice pale yellow hair after you've bleached it, you're going to pick a level 10 violet toner, and that's going to leave you with that nice, cool, icy blonde in the end. Keep in mind, you can also tone with a darker shade than you've lifted. So if you've lifted to that nice pale yellow level 10 blonde, but you want to emit more of an intense silvery blonde, you could pick a level 9 violet and tone down. Because you're toning down on lighter hair, you're going to get a little bit more intensity and overtone from that toner, and it's going to make that color look a little bit more silver and it'll have a little bit more depth to it, not be quite as bright as the level 10 on toner on level 10 hair. So it just really depends on what you're going for. A helpful tip is to Google and find a underlying pigment / toner chart like this one, which can help you determine what tones you're going to need to neutralize whatever tones you've left behind in your hair. My preference when it comes to toning hair is demi-permanent hair dye. Demi-permanent hair dye, or maybe it's marketed as a demi-permanent toner, it doesn't matter. A demi-permanent will be mixed with a level 10 volume peroxide or lower, depending on the brand. You want to mix as per the manufacturer's instructions, and it's just going to be a lot more gentle on your hair, and it's just going to be the easiest one to use. It's going to just deposit that tone, leave your hair nice and healthy and shiny, and most demi-permanents have great conditioning agents in them, which are just amazing on your hair after bleach. So you can also use permanent hair dye as a toner. A very popular permanent hair dye that is a toner is the T18 by Wella. It is a permanent hair dye. It's mixed with 20 volume peroxide. It will absolutely tone your hair. It is a level 10 violet toner, so if you've lifted your hair to a nice pale yellow level 10, it will give you a nice silvery blonde. I don't like permanent toners for several reasons. The first is I feel like they're a little bit too harsh for freshly bleached hair. It's really not necessary if you've lifted your hair really well to put a permanent hair dye on, because it just has a stronger level of peroxide, so it's going to cause a little bit more damage. The other thing that you have to remember is that because you're using a 20 volume peroxide and because there is ammonia present in the color, it will cause what's called a base shift. And what that means is if there's any of your natural hair exposed, so if you have roots that you have not bleached and you're just toning your ends in between salon visits, or if you've done some highlights and your natural hair is in between, unless your hair is really, really dark, that permanent hair dye is going to lift a slight amount of your pigment in your natural hair, exposing warmth and making your roots go a very warm shade. So it depends on how light you are and how warm your head is, and just some people only get a slight base shift. Some people's roots can go very, very orange. So you just need to be careful when you're using a permanent hair dye. It's best on an all-over bleach, or if you're a professional and you know how to use it. So for doing your hair at home, I really suggest staying away from the permanent hair dyes as toner and sticking to a demi-permanent. You really can't go wrong there. Another type of dye that I suggest staying away from when you're toning your hair at home is the rapid toners or the fast toners that are marketed that work in 5 minutes or less. They can work extremely quickly, sometimes in as little as 30 seconds to a minute, which is super convenient when you're working behind a sink, trying to get your clients out the door. When you're doing your hair at home and you're not super experienced, sometimes you can't even get it on quick enough before it's processing, and you end up over processing and the color comes out much darker or more intense than you intended because now 2 minutes is too long. So really stick with the classic demi-permanent that needs to be processed for between 20 and 30 minutes, and that is going to be your best bet. It might take a little bit longer, but the patience is well worth the results in the end, and it's just a much simpler product to use on your own when you're inexperienced. As always, no matter what product you choose or what brand you go with, make sure you follow the manufacturer's instructions. Open up that box, read their mixing instructions, mix to their desired ratios, use the level of peroxides that are suggested. I also suggest using the same brand of peroxide as the toner or color that you've chosen, and just follow their instructions for processing time. You can't go wrong. Every brand is slightly different, and you're always going to get the best results if you follow manufacturer's instructions. A tip is make sure that your roots and your ends match. I know this sounds obvious, but I see people do this all the time. They want to go lighter blonde, so they bleach their roots to a level 10, but their ends are still a level 9, and then they put their level 10 toner on, and now they have these silvery blonde roots, and they have these yellow ends. Well, that's because you can't tone those level 9 yellow ends with your level 10 toner. You need to tone with the same shade. So really what you should do in that instance is just lift your roots to the level 9 to match your hair and use a level 9 toner all over, or lift the roots and then go back and relift your ends one more level before you use the level 10 toner. The same goes for if you have level 10 ends, make sure that you don't rinse off those roots while they're still a level 9. Otherwise, when you use the toner, you're gonna have those orangey, yellowy roots that we all just hate to see when we're finished bleaching. If you do rinse out your color and your roots are a darker level of blonde than your ends and you don't want to bleach anymore because you feel like your hair can't take any more lifting, just tone your roots to a darker shade than your ends. Give yourself a nice little root drag. So if you've only lifted your roots to an 8, then use a level 8 toner and drag it down and blend it with your level 10 ends. So you would put your level 8 toner all over those level 8 roots, and then you're gonna put your level 10 toner all over those level 10 ends, and then you're just gonna blend them together. You're just gonna mush them around where they meet, and those two colors are gonna blend, and you're gonna get a nice soft root melt look. Much better than having hot roots that are orange or yellow and just look like you dyed your own hair at home. If you've used the right level of toner on your hair and you rinse it off and some of your hair has gone purpley or silver or gray or more white than the rest of your hair, don't worry, this can happen to areas of your hair that are a little bit more over-processed than the other parts. They're a little bit more porous. It's totally normal. It even happens to professionals. It's just overtoning. Simple fix, usually 2 or 3 shampoos, and it evens itself out. Don't stress about it. Don't try to bleach it out. If you're insistent that it has to be gone immediately, give your hair a couple shampoos. You could even use a clarifying shampoo to make it come out faster, but honestly, it goes away super, super fast, and that color will be even in no time. And finally, guys, make sure that you apply the toner fully saturated on every strand of your hair that needs toner. The toner will not expand and move its way through your hair, so you need to take those small sections that we always talk about, really saturate the hair with lots of product, make sure you have enough product, you've got all the tools that you need to get the job done, and process for the full amount of time, even if you're freaking out because the color looks like it's going purple. If you have done everything right, when you rinse it off, you're gonna have a beautiful blonde color underneath. I am going to add a little bit of a video on the end here that is taken from my video where I bleached my own roots, and I'm just gonna show you guys just the part where I toned my hair in case you didn't see the other video.
All right, so I am mixing my toner here. For my toner in this video, I did use 3 different colors. I would suggest sticking to 1. It makes it simpler for you. I usually mix between 50 and 70 grams of toner for a full head of toner, mixing it with 10 volume developer. Keep in mind that my toner is mixed at a 1-to-1 ratio. If yours is mixed at a 1-to-1.5 or a 1-to-2 ratio, you might not need as many grams of toner because you're going to make up for it with the developer. And make sure you mix it really, really well. Get both of those products fully incorporated, nice smooth consistency before you apply it to the head. And then you're going to brush out your hair so you can get through it all. Make sure you've used a little bit of conditioner if your hair is tangly at all when it's wet, and use a nice detangling brush because your hair has been freshly bleached. You want to be gentle with it. Start applying the bleach to the the toner to the freshly bleached areas first before you put it anywhere else. So just nice thin sections, applying the toner top and bottom of the section to make sure that you get all that hair. And you want to move as quickly as you can while still being accurate because toner begins to process as soon as it's on your hair. So you want to get it on rather quickly. I also leave the hairs around the front of the face out until the end because these hairs are really fine and tend to absorb toner very quickly, so I don't want it on for quite as long as some of the other parts of the hair. And make sure you have fully saturated, like I said before. Get lots and lots of toner. Make sure it's on all of those roots, mids, and ends. And there is that toner processing to a dark purple, but don't worry, there we go, nice and silvery blonde. I'm going to put in some heat protection smoothing spray, get the blow dryer going. You can see here, guys, that my roots are a little bit more silvery, purpley, especially around my face and the rest of my hair. That is that overtone we were talking about, but no big deal. Washes out and turns to a nice platinum blonde within 2 shampoos. Awesome.
So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being with me again today. As always, like and subscribe, hit the notification button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, and comment below to let me know which videos you would like to see next. I have so many ideas, but whatever you guys want to see is what I want to post, so let me know. This has been another episode of DIY Hair School. See you later, guys.